Test, test, check 1, 2. You know you need unique New York. You know you need unique New York. Does that sound all right? Ah, that's better. You can always tell something's missing when you get isolated results. Like AI that's only right for one of your systems. Get AI that can work across your data and applications. Learn more at IBM.com. The AI built for business. IBM.
Hey, hotcakes. Welcome to Hot Take, the podcast where we talk about the climate crisis and all the ways that we're talking and not talking about it. I'm Amy Westervelt.
And 90s R&B.
Just kidding.
I'm Amy Westervelt.
And I'm Mariana Etekler. We're taking a break. This is our season 4. Is this season 4?
Oh, I think it might be season 3.
Whatever this season is,
yeah.
this is this finale. And
Yeah.
we will be coming back to you later in the summer with more episodes. The newsletter will keep up, but the podcast is taking a little break for a minute.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, everyone needs a break.
Everyone does, and definitely we do, because y'all, this is not even a part-time job.
Yes, true. That is true. Yes.
So yeah, we're going to be taking a break, but we thought it'd be good to come together one more time, just me and Amy, to talk about some good news and some bad news.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's quite a bit of both right now.
Yeah. And we're not used to one of those things. So we're going to be talking we're going to be talking about the good news with the oil industries taking major L's lately, and then we're going to talk about what's going to happen over the summer with hurricanes and wildfires and pipelines.
Oh my.
So, yeah. Without further ado, it is time.
It's time to talk about climate.
So I would have been off Twitter and kind of under a rock for the past few weeks, but even I heard about the amazing news for the planet and terrible, awful news for the oil industry last week. Yeah. As I understand it, 3 of my faves got their asses handed to them.
They did.
That would be Chevron.
They did.
Chevron, Exxon, and Shell. Mm-hmm. So why don't we start? Can I pick my favorite first for you to tell me?
Yes. But first I have to say that this all came on the heels of a report from the IEA, the International Energy Agency, famously started by Henry Kissinger, famous fan of fossil fuels, that said, actually, no more new fossil fuel projects ever. Again, period. End of story. Which totally flipped the industry out first. And then they had a very bad week, which was great to watch.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and IEA, just in case you didn't catch that real subtle reference to Henry Kissinger, they're pretty conservative.
Yep.
These are not like some activist type of NGO type of place. Like,
That's right.
API quotes these folks all the time, which should let you know where they generally fall. So if they're out here saying no more fossil fuel infrastructure, that is a really, really big deal.
They're out here giving us something to quote to the API when we're trolling them. It's fucking beautiful.
Note to self.
Yes.
But yeah, so 3 of the big guys really took it. Let's go with the richest one,
Okay.
and the one that you did a whole series on Drilled, Chevron.
Chevron. Okay, so Chevron had a bit of a shareholder uprising. They there's a group called Follow This, and they put forth a shareholder proposition that passed that said that Chevron needs to actually consider the use of its products when it's calculating its emissions. This is a thing that none of the oil companies do. So when they talk about net zero, tell them to blow it out their asses, because what does that mean when you're not like taking, into account how your product is used?
Right. So basically they sell you the gas at their little gas station, to take the easiest example.
Yeah.
They sell you gas and they assume no responsibility for the emissions that come when you burn that gas when you drive away.
Correct.
Right. So like they think they have plausible deniability in the sense that like, well, I sold you the gas. I don't know what you did with it. You could have put it back in the ground for all I know.
You could be using it as a joint treatment. Who knows? That's how petroleum
no idea.
was used in the early days. People thought it was like a cure-all for things. Anyway.
How'd that work out for them?
Yes. So, yeah, it's called Scope 3 emissions. It's like, how your product gets used. And okay, yes, we're not expecting them to like track the specific use of every gallon of gas, but they can make some friggin' assumptions.
It's, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, this shareholder activist group put forth a proposal at Chevron's shareholder meeting saying we want Chevron to actually look at its Scope 3 emissions, so the emissions created by the burning of its product. And it passed. So that's huge. I mean, shareholder resolutions are like a thing that's been around for a long time. Basically a nonprofit will get enough money together to, buy some shares so they can show up at the shareholder meetings and they can put forth proposals and things like that. And it hasn't tended to amount to that much, but it's been building for a long time. They've been these kinds of proposals have been getting defeated by smaller and smaller margins. And then just all of a sudden, it seems like the scales are tipping a bit. That was big.
And did this surprise you? Because you've been following these folks for a long time.
It did surprise me, especially Chevron. They are used to having people show up to their shareholder meetings and yell at them. Amazon Watch goes every year to talk about Ecuador. And that was another thing that came up actually this time was their shareholders were actually like kind of chastising them for continuing to go after Steven Donziger and basically handling the whole situation in such a way that it continues to be like a story in the media,
Say just a little bit more for folks who don't know who Steven Donziger is and who should listen to Drilled.
Yes, we told this story in season 5 of Drilled. It's there's a case in Ecuador that's been going on for more than 30 years now. It started out as a Texaco case, and Chevron inherited it when they acquired Texaco. Texaco dumped a bunch of oil in the Amazon in Ecuador, ruined water, all of that stuff. And Steven Donziger is an American attorney who was one of the attorneys that helped a group of Ecuadorians actually win a settlement from Chevron. And Chevron was supposed to pay them over $9 billion to remediate this problem in the Amazon. And even before that ruling came down, but I think it was sort of the writing was on the wall, Chevron sued the plaintiffs saying that the whole case was like a shakedown and that they were all frauds and all of that kind of stuff. So, that was all in like 2013, 2014, and they actually won that case. There was a whole bunch of crazy stuff that happened. But for some reason, they started going after this one lawyer, Steven Donziger, again in like 2018, 2019. And they wanted him to hand over a bunch of his files. He said no. The judge held him in contempt for saying no. He tried to appeal that, and the judge charged him with criminal contempt. And he got put on house arrest. Actually, the U.S. attorney refused to prosecute him, but the judge appointed a private law firm to prosecute him that just so happens to have ties to Chevron. So it's this like very gross, like dirty thing. And they've kind of now jumped the shark on it. Like I think if they had just left well enough alone after the like 2014, 2015 stuff, they probably would have been okay. But they've gone after Donziger so hard now that I think it's had the opposite effect, where it's like it's just made them seem crazy, and it's made him seem like what he's always tried to portray himself as, which is like just a human rights activist and, you know, someone who has been targeted by the company and all of these things. So they did
the most is what you're saying.
They did.
They did the most.
They really did the most. Yeah, it's just like, calm down, guys. Like, they got him disbarred. I mean, they just went fucking apeshit on this guy. And they've gotten, like, they basically, like, own the deed to his house now as collateral for, like, legal fees. They got him disbarred, so he can't work as a lawyer anymore. He's been on house arrest for more than 600 days for a quote-unquote crime that only comes with a 6-month jail sentence. I mean, it's just like...
talk about a quarantine.
It is crazy. It's crazy. So I think that, the shareholders were kind of like, why are you doing this? You know?
Yeah.
Like, this doesn't make you look good. And it seems like a waste of money and time. And, you know.
And also, don't you have an oil spill to clean up?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
They also had another oil spill out in Richmond not that long ago.
That's true. Oh, yeah, they did.
Get your priorities together, guys.
Yep, they sure did.
Right? And it's just like... They just make it... The trolls write themselves, right? It's like, at this point, you trolled yourself.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. It's crazy.
So
anyway,
it looks like this shareholder business was not contained to Chevron, though.
That's true.
And my other oil bay, Exxon, which has me blocked on Twitter. What happened with them?
Oh my God. Exxon had some shareholder action happening too. So there's a kind of activist investor group called Engine Number One. And they made some headlines, you know, a little bit ago because they bought $50 million worth of shares in Exxon. They're basically a hedge fund. And they very publicly said, you know, we're doing this because we really think that Exxon should be tackling climate change part of its business model and all of this stuff. And they had said they were going to run 4 different people for board seats, and Exxon just sort of like rolled their eyes at them. But they won 2 seats on Exxon's board. So that's a big deal because the Exxon CEO, Darren Woods, like sort of confidently said that this was not going to happen. So it made him look like a chump. And then also they're not done counting all of the votes. So it's possible that they might end up with 3 of the 12 Exxon board seats. And that's like a pretty big deal. I mean, shareholder resolutions are one thing, board seats and like, you know, being able to...
What are the difference between those two things?
Well, the board just has like a lot more sway over how the company is run. So there are certain things that the board has to unanimously agree on, which is going to be very hard if, like, you know, it's something like, let's continue new fossil fuel projects. And these 2 guys are like, nope. So anyway, I mean, I think, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I do want to just like have like, you know, this caveat that like, I don't think that we are going to be saved by hedge fund managers. You know, I look at like the whole investor kind of community with an eyebrow raised in general.
Right.
So, you know, but I think the fact that, I mean, I would rather have people who say they want to do something about climate on Exxon's board than not. That seems good, you know? So,
right.
Yeah.
It's just like, we're not going to have capitalism save capitalism,
Exactly. Yeah.
But my little petty heart is just like having a ball right now.
Oh, I know.
The petty in me is enjoying every second of this.
Yeah.
And my favorite headline about it comes from AM New York, and it says, "The little engine that could and the oil giant that couldn't."
It's so good. It's so good. So funny.
I mean, it's delicious. It is delicious.
It's hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wish that I wasn't blocked by Exxon so that I could just like taunt them about
Troll
it
them to hell and back. Yes.
You know, whatever.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
But then Shell had problems of a different kind, right?
Oh, yeah. This one, I think I might have loved this one the most of all of the climate
Because it
news.
involved the courts.
It did. Yeah, I love a good climate, court case. And this one really, it was a big deal. Like it sets a big precedent. So a court in The Hague, which I just love.
Amazing. Amazing.
Shell has made this pledge to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 20% within the next decade and to net zero by 2050. And this court said, try harder, Shell. And they have now ordered Shell to slash emissions 45% by 2030 compared to 2019 levels. So that's actually a pretty big deal too, because it's not like, okay, sure, compared to 2000 levels. No, compared to 2019 levels. So like pre-pandemic, 45%. And they said it can't just be your operations. It has to be your product use too. So like the shareholders were trying to push Chevron to do. The court said, yeah, Shell, you have to do that. Shell, of course, has said that they're going to like appeal immediately and all that kind of stuff. But it kind of just, it sends a message, I think, to not just to the oil companies, but to people who are looking to bring more cases like this. And there are a lot of those. There are a lot of cases. There are a lot of cases in the U.S. There are constitutional cases being brought all over the world. There are a lot more cases like this, which are saying, hey, if we're going to meet our Paris climate agreement commitments, these guys can't keep doing what they're doing. So, it's a big deal. And I love that the judge in this case really sort of basically took a page from your green trolling book, Mary, and gave a little bitch, what's yours to Shell in her ruling. Because she was kind of yeah, you still have to reduce your emissions. Even if, because Shell kind of tried to be well, the government's not requiring us to do this or that, and the judge was like, yeah, so what? You're responsible for your emissions. So she wrote, companies have an independent responsibility aside from what states do. Even if states do nothing or only a little, companies have the responsibility to respect human rights, which I love. I love that she basically turned the individual responsibility thing on an oil company. It's so good. Yeah.
Yeah. For folks who are not intimately aware of my Twitter history, my very first green troll was against BP when they tweeted something about how to calculate your personal carbon footprint. And after trying and failing several times to report the tweet to Twitter as abusive and harmful, because that was how I was expressing my pettiness in those days. I couldn't get the report to go through, so I responded, "Bitch, what's yours?" And it has become one of my most famous tweets.
That is so funny. It's so funny. Yeah.
But hearing this about Shell, I'm reminded of two things. One being that they I remember back in December, a bunch of their top executives walked off the job because Shell's climate commitments were not strong enough. And Shell's whole thing was like, no, we're doing enough on climate. We're just not communicating about it, which meant we're not greenwashing enough.
You know who said that back in the day, too, was a fucking Apple. Remember when Apple got, like, last place in Greenpeace's, like, green technology report? This was, like, 15 years ago. Apple was, like, last place, and everybody was like, oh, boo, Apple. And Steve Jobs was still there at the time. And they'd said that exact thing. They were like, actually, we're really good on this stuff. We just don't talk about it. And it was like, okay, sure. Mm-hmm, sure you are.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I feel like there's a lot more of these sorts of cases coming up. And I'm also reminded of the one that was set to go before the Supreme Court back in January against Shell. Mm-hmm. And there was all this talk about Amy Coney Barrett and how her father. Do you know
used to work for
lately
Shell.
About what's... Yeah. Do you know anything lately about that?
There was actually a ruling in that case. It's very obscure, though. So it's like, it's one of the climate liability cases. It was brought by Baltimore against all the oil majors. And basically what these cases say, there's like 22 or something of them now, but it's a liability case. So they're basically saying, look, sea level rise and flooding is going to cost us this much money, and it's like this much more money than it would have cost us because you guys delayed climate action for so long. So you should have to pay, your fair share of this, because otherwise who pays? Mm-hmm. Citizens. Like residents pay via taxes. So the city of Baltimore is like, pay up. All of these suits are like are taking a similar tack where they want companies to pay into a fund that then gets used to pay for like seawalls and things like that. And then in the Baltimore case, the oil companies basically like appealed to multiple circuit courts saying that the case shouldn't be in state court, that it should be in federal court. That got knocked back. But then they also kind of appealed with a laundry list of things, including like things that are items that the district court has to consider as part of their appeal. So even though the district court basically said, like, no, it's staying in state court, the case should go forward, it's done, because the oil companies had included a couple of like specific line items in their appeal, the Supreme Court had to take their jurisdictional appeal. And but it's like this very wonky thing where it's like all the Supreme Court can say is, yes, the district court should look at every single item on this list instead of like the two things that they looked at. And that's what has ended up happening. Amy Coney Barrett did not recuse herself from that. She absolutely should have. Her dad was an executive at Shell during the time that is like highlighted in this case when Shell and all the other oil companies were very active in suppressing and spinning climate change information. I think it's ridiculous that she and I'm concerned that if she didn't recuse herself in a case where it's like the Supreme Court, really like the main impact that their ruling has had is that it delays discovery for that much longer, which means like there won't be new documents coming out as a result of that case anytime soon. But it does nothing. Like it doesn't stop the case from going forward. It will eventually go forward in state court. It just sort of like delays it. And it's this very, very tiny like procedural ruling. If she won't even recuse herself on that, which is kind of a nothing burger, she's definitely not going to recuse herself for like much bigger cases. So yeah, that's a bummer. Yeah.
It's interesting too because like also the Supreme Court was one of the few places where we got some climate wins during the Trump, especially those last few days of the Trump era.
That's right.
It's interesting. And what were you saying about the fraud cases?
Yeah, so this is sort of like the new batch of cases. The very first one was filed in Massachusetts quite a while ago, and it's still moving forward. But in the last year, there's been 3 new ones filed in Minnesota, Washington, D.C., and the city of New York, all basically using either state or local consumer protection laws to say that the oil companies greenwashing, and in a lot of these cases, they're including the API and like Koch Industries too. So like the Koch brothers, it's very interesting. And I think like maybe has more potential to win because you don't have to prove damage the way that you do. Like with the liability cases, it's like you have to prove that specifically like this climate change caused that damage, you know, which is hard to do. But in these cases, it's like you misled consumers, you knowingly lied. And that's pretty easy to prove because we have all this like internal documentation of what they knew. And then we have all this like public documentation of what they were saying publicly when they knew what they knew, you know? So yeah, it'll be really interesting. I think the first one to go to trial will be Massachusetts, and they have only named Exxon as a defendant.
When do you expect that to go to trial?
This year. Actually, it should be like later this year.
Okay.
So yeah.
I'll be ordering a lot of popcorn.
It's going to be real interesting. And then the Minnesota one, you know, they were supposed to announce that case the day that George Floyd was murdered. And they postponed, I know, they postponed announcing it because Keith Ellison was like, I really want to make a big climate justice point with this case and with the announcement of it. And I don't want people to think that I'm just like, you know, like attaching it to the Black Lives Matter movement or to these things that happen, right? So he put it off for like a month and then they announced it. And like, it was the first of any of these cases that I've ever seen where he mentioned climate justice in like the first paragraph of the complaint. The whole press conference was about how this crime impacted people of color and low-income people first and hardest. Winona LaDuke like talked about line 3 at it. Like it was really, I was like, oh, wow, this is great. Like this is what happens when you have like a progressive person of color as your attorney general.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
It's just like, I am astounded by how far we have come in the, like just the general understanding of climate change, the way we talk about climate change, like it has changed so much and it's so much for the better.
I mean, I remember actually not that long ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, Keith Ellison was considered too radical to be the DNC chair. Do you remember this? It was him and Tom Perez. And people were like, no way, Keith Ellison is way too radical.
Yeah.
Now he's the attorney general of Minnesota. And, you know, he's leading like all these really incredible reforms and lawsuits and everything else. And it's like, you know.
It's true. It matters who's in them, but it also, like, I'm just thinking about, like, the way that general people understand climate change and, like, the way that we're just, like, unapologetically talking about it as an injustice and talking about, like, I saw an article a few weeks ago that was kind of like, it's turning out that the way we talk about climate change is increasingly important to the way that we solve it.
Yes, and I saw that, and you were like, how about it's always been important, and we just sucked at it for a really long time. Yeah,
right? Like, people were just like, oh, it's just words. Like, actually, words lead to things. Words lead to political will.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, we've just come a long way, and it's kind of like, I think that you and I see it from a different vantage point because we've done this podcast since 2019, and like we've really been watching the climate conversation change.
Big
from
time.
then on, and we haven't even been doing this that long, but we see just so much monumental change.
That's true. It actually, like, it's really, I think it's important to like sort of pause and recognize that and take these wins when we get them to, you know, and just like acknowledge that. It has changed quickly. You know, like we've talked about this before, but I vividly remember the backlash to some of the language around the Green New Deal when it was first proposed and like so much of like, why are you like muddying the waters on climate with all this social justice stuff? And like that just seems silly now, you know, like I just, you know, not that there aren't still people who would make that argument, but it's just like, just way less of a sort of accepted talking point. And like I see so many,
Yeah.
I don't know, just even in like mainstream publications, I see so many stories that are like, you know, yeah, this is connected to that, is connected to this, and it's all a justice issue. You know?
The conversation just went into such huge growing pains so fast, right? Like it once upon a time you would never talk about it as an emotional issue. You would never talk about it as a justice issue. You would never talk about like root causes. It was science and just science and science for science sake, and that was it. And that made it very complicated, made it very like it felt like it was over people's head. It's very easy to confuse people. When you need like an advanced degree to understand something, and when people get confused, they give up. And so now it's just like, I remember the first time I wrote an article, my first article on climate justice that got any sort of attention was like about climate change not being the first existential threat, meaning people have had to fight for their lives before and all of that sort of stuff. I got trolled to hell and back. People told me that I was trying to exploit the climate cause for Black Lives Matter.
Yes,
for,
that was such a common talking point. It was like, you're trying to use climate to talk about racial justice. Like, okay.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
And then the next year I wrote something that was even more sassy, that was basically saying if you don't accept that colonialism is a root cause of climate change, you're a climate denier. I got like little to no pushback at all. Like it's crazy how much we matured in a year. And like people always say like, oh, it's too late to solve climate change, or like we're in too deep or whatever. But we have seen just so much change so fast. That is what actually gives me a little bit of hope. And I'm not somebody who runs on hope. I run on spite. But when I have hope, it's because I looked back and I'm like, oh my gosh, this changed on a dime. Who knows what else could change on another dime? Little pat on the back. Chevron and Exxon had a reckoning by their shareholders, and Shell got called to The Hague, which just beautiful. No notes. What do you think is in the future for BP?
So actually, BP had something of a shareholder kerfuffle the last week or so too. There was the same group that brought forth the Chevron shareholder proposal. Brought forth a proposal to BP, and the board opposed this proposal, which was to take faster climate action. But BlackRock, which owns a 6.8% stake in BP, that's pretty large, said, yeah, we agree. And like people were just like, wait, what? Because I mean, BlackRock has been making more and more, announcements about how it wants to see climate action and it doesn't want to invest in fossil fuels and all of that kind of stuff. But the fact that they would back an activist group is like a pretty big deal, especially a big slap in the face after BP's been out there, talking a real big game about all of its climate plans.
Right.
So, yes, that's pretty interesting.
Because I associate BlackRock with the Iraq War.
I know. They're terrible. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like not about to buy a BlackRock t-shirt anytime soon. But yeah. But that's what makes it surprising, is that it's like, okay, well, BlackRock, like, they care about money, Yeah.
I thought that they were a literal rock of coal.
Yes. They have pretty much behaved like one for like most of their existence. So yes. But
like, did a piece of coal write this article?
Yes. They put out an announcement about it, and they said that they supported this resolution because they see it as a, quote, means to reiterate our expectation that BP progressively refine its greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets. And then BP declined to comment. But they did, the day after this happened, they announced a massive acquisition of solar farms all across the U.S. So, I don't know if the two are related, but it was interesting timing.
Probably.
It was pretty interesting timing. Yeah.
It's so interesting. Like we were saying earlier, it's like all of these shareholders tried out their bunkers during the COVID days and realized like, oh shit, this isn't going to protect me. I still have to live on this planet. Right. It's like a bunch of rich dudes woke up one day and were like, oh shit, we live here.
They were like, oh, bunker living actually kind of sucks. So maybe we should try to do something here.
And like, doesn't seem like this whole Mars thing is working out.
Yes.
We might have to stay here. So we might need this bitch to be livable.
That's right. I do. I think that they all have sort of realized that there will not be an escape for them.
We thought there was going to be like a whole backup planet.
Yeah, no, guys, no. Yeah. It does kind of seem that way though, right? And also it's like, there's all these geoengineering experiments, but like none of them, the one nice thing I will say about billionaires that like they know how to evaluate options, okay? And like
right. They can hedge like a motherfucker.
That's right. And they're looking around and they're like, carbon storage, like been working on it for decades, still nowhere near. Geoengineering, now they're like the ones the farthest along is solar geoengineering, which like most experts are saying could cause as many like new problems as it potentially would solve. And then bunker life, not great. Mars, not going to be anywhere near habitable anytime soon. So they're like, well, shit, I guess we're back to plan A. Yeah.
So here we go. So this is the good news. I mean, it's not excellent. It's just like the most binding part of it is the shareholder agreements, which is like kind of sad that we had to get to this point to get this. And also it's a capitalist solution to a capitalist problem. So I don't trust it.
Right.
So.
That's right. Yes. I don't trust it either. But I'm like, well, I'd rather see this than, BlackRock being like, yeah, we still think natural gas is great, So.
No, it's definitely an improvement. And if nothing else, it makes for like just beautiful green trolls. So there's that.
Yes, it really, really does.
Right, which
it does.
Which I will not be participating in because I'm taking an indefinite break from Twitter. You've been taking some time off of it too.
Yes.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
It's very nice. Yes. I think we both were just like, ugh, like it is a lot to feel like every opinion you have is going to be evaluated by, thousands of people. I like routinely, I've seen like some of the shitty things people say to you. The one I get often is that like the usual, like you should just go die if you're worried about emissions. But then also like that I should have never had kids. I have like a very dedicated band of trolls who love to like tweet that at me.
I cannot imagine ever fixing my mouth or my fingers to say that to somebody. I just couldn't do it. Like a complete stranger.
Like who has the time? Yeah. I know. I can't. Like I'm like what? Yeah. So anyway, and then also I think it was affecting like even how I was processing information, where I was like getting too into, the Twitter lens on things. So I just was like, break. And like losing focus. I mean, it's so hard. I think it like definitely messes with your attention span if you're on there too much, right?
Definitely. I think so. For me, I don't see the mean things people say to me because my mute game is strong, and Twitter kind of learns what you don't want to read, so it'll start muting things preemptively for you. For me, it was just like always feeling like you had to like the constant rush to comment on something and like the dogpiling that happens on Twitter. Like I'm all for bullying big companies because they deserve it. And that's not a human being Like I think there's something
Right.
like, even though it hasn't happened to me, just seeing it happen to so many other people where like they get just like dogpiled on in the biggest arena known to man. And everybody feels like they have to dunk on that one viral tweet and like make someone feel small and like that sort of shit. Just like, I hate seeing it.
Right.
And like,
Right.
it's so it can become such a place for negativity sometimes. It also is just like not being good on my attention span either. And like, I know there's people listening to this being like, I never used Twitter. You guys never should have been there in the first place. But like, here's the thing about Twitter is that it is where the discourse is shaped. It really is. You might not think that your everyday life is shaped by it, but believe me, it is. And if you're...
There's so many media people on there that like find... they find leads and they find story ideas on there.
Right. And it's where you like can change the conversation. The climate conversation was changed largely on Twitter, as most conversations are changed. Like the conversation around prison abolition was largely normalized on Twitter. So it's a very important and influential space. And like, I'll be back on it. We're just sort of talking about like the stresses of being a public figure and like, once you get to a certain point and like, look, we're not talking about being celebrities over here. It's just like being visible and having like we do have a platform. So there's that. But like you get to a certain point and it's like you have to have the right opinions on things. And
that's right.
That's a lot of pressure.
And what is considered the right opinion changes really frequently too. So it's just this very like, oh God, so yeah.
I mean,
it's weird. Part of me misses being on there sometimes because it is a really good source of news.
Right. And also without it, I don't know that we would know each other.
That's true.
Right.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. Yes.
So
that is very
true. In so many ways, it's a great space. I've learned a lot on Twitter. I have, met a lot of really interesting people, a lot of people who have become my friends, obviously. And also it's where I get to bully oil companies. Hello.
Right.
So I'm not going to sit here and act like I hate Twitter, but it's also like, just the way that we often talk to each other on Twitter, I think could just like use a reset a lot of the time. And just,
I agree.
Also,
I agree. People forget that they're like humans behind there. I think your rule of like, it's okay to bully companies but not humans is a good one.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that, like, I've not always been, like, super proud of even my own behavior on Twitter. Like, there are some tweets I wish I could take back. There's some, like, Twitter arguments I wish I hadn't gotten involved in. But, we're all living, we're all learning, and, the way you behave one day does not have to be the way you behave forever. So I'm just saying all of that to say that, like, just going to be taking an indefinite break to try to get my attention span back, finish a book.
That's right. Yes, same. I like really found myself struggling to finish some projects and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I have just been, needing a like attention reset, I think too. Oh, because I feel like it gets like it totally sucks you into this sort of like competitive mindset too, especially if you're in media. It's like everyone's always sort of like performing in a way, and it's just like I just don't want to think about myself that much in general, period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll be I'm going to be indefinitely off Twitter. Amy's going to be intermittently off Twitter. We're going to be taking a break from the podcast for a little while. We'll be back later in the summer. The newsletter will still be up, but we're probably going to be taking some intermittent breaks from that too, just because, we do a lot of stuff other than Hot Take and we're tired.
That's right.
I need to go focus on some stuff. what's going on with the bad news?
Oh my God, there is quite a bit of bad news. You knew it was coming. I mean, for a start, it's now fire and hurricane season, right? Is it officially hurricane season yet? I'm pretty bad about that.
Yeah, today is the first day of hurricane season.
It is officially fire season as well. We've already had like a lot of what they call red flag warnings, which is when it's like super hot and the wind is picked up and, things like that. So basically when everyone was just sort of at home, there was a huge reduction in like the sort of human related risk factors, which the interesting thing is like there were still quite a few fires.
I distinctly remember the western half of the country being literally in flames.
Yeah, totally. It was like there were still a ton of fires even without all of the people doing all of the dumb shit that they like do to start fires usually. So I'm very concerned that this year because everyone is like, people who have gotten vaccinated are like, I'm finally free. But a lot of people like want to travel, but are still a little bit hesitant about planes, right? So it's like road trip central over here for the summer. So I'm worried about how that's going to interact with fire season.
We're talking about last year when Oregon, Washington, and California were all legit on fire.
But it's like, okay, that happened during a season when people were doing like 80% less than they usually do. And people are the thing that starts most fires. So I'm like, okay, we had that last year. I'm very concerned about what we're going to have this year when everyone is on the road. People are camping. Like the number one thing people want to do this summer is camp because they're like, well, if they have kids, it's still safe because it's outside and whatever else. I'm like, fuck. It's like all the biggest risk behaviors are going to be the things that people are doing this summer.
Yeah, seriously.
So I'm concerned. And then hurricane season, I feel like seems like it just ended. Now it's back.
It's kind of like year round. Like hurricane
That's like
season
fire
is
season
kind of
now,
like
too.
wildfire season.
Yeah. It's just the whole year anymore.
It doesn't end. But yeah, they considered starting it officially in May, which is just like wild. And last year we got deep into the Greek alphabet. I think we discovered new Greek alphabets we didn't even know were in there. So very concerned about that. The Gulf Coast in particular got it really hard. I feel like the Atlantic coast didn't get it as bad last year. And yeah, I'm deeply worried about it. Especially also considering the toll that these hurricanes take on the global south in places like Latin America, where the infrastructure is still really reeling from last year's hurricane season, from even hurricanes that happened in the 1990s. People are still recovering from it.
It's so concerning because there's so much about like climate action that gets impacted by natural disasters too. So like Puerto Rico is a great example. In the wake of Hurricane Maria, they were like, let's transition to distributed solar. That would make it so that if there's another big hurricane like this, like everybody has, it's like, okay, it might take you a minute to get your solar panels on your roof working again, but you're not going to be out electricity for months while like we figure out how to fix the whole grid, right?
It felt like that lasted a year.
Yeah.
That was the longest blackout in American history.
Yes, it was crazy. It was crazy. Yeah. But then it's like because of the hurricane and because the country was like so decimated and whatever, the natural gas industry was able to come in and be like, no, what you guys really want is natural gas, and get them like totally set up with natural gas infrastructure that they're now going to be stuck with for the next however long, so it's like, it's this whole domino effect that is really shitty.
Right. And Puerto Rico's economy was already just like, on the brink.
That's right.
When Maria happened. And so, yeah, it's It's why, again, why this is an everything story, right? Because like Katrina, New Orleans is still reeling from Katrina, and that was some 15 years ago.
Yeah,
So
that's right. I mean, it is. It's like, I think people kind of forget about that, but it's like, yeah, that's still even. I mean, yeah, it's ridiculous. Anyway, so that's no good. And then the other bad news is that, like, I think there's kind of what seems to me to be like a little bit of a rush to build as many pipelines as possible and drill as much as possible while they're still able to do those things.
Seems like a rush.
It seems like a rush. So you have all of these.
Can't be sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a rush. It is a rush. Yeah, where it's just like, okay, they're like dividing up the last few untapped reserves. And then, just there's all of the stuff around Line 3, the Weymouth compressor in Massachusetts, too. There's just all of these things where it's like they're building pipelines that don't even have customers. You know what I mean? That's the thing that's like blows my mind. It's like the people at the other end of like the Line 3 pipeline, it's not like there's like just tens of thousands of people waiting to get their energy from the gas flowing through that pipeline, So anyway, I suspect that we'll see quite a bit of pipeline protests this summer, which I guess is good and bad. I'm glad to see the protests, but it sucks that they have to happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's also, nerve-wracking because of the critical infrastructure laws, which
That's right.
I know you know a great deal about. Can you explain them real quick?
Well, they are basically ways to increase the criminal penalties associated with protesting around anything that's designated as critical infrastructure, which includes pipelines, railroads, all kinds, bridges, waterways, all kinds of things. And Minnesota currently has like 4 different proposed laws. So if any one of those goes through, then some of these folks that are protesting, could be, up for long prison sentences or very hefty fines. These laws also include organizations. So like Honor the Earth, for example, which has been helping to organize a lot of the protests around Line 3, could potentially be liable for hefty penalties around pipeline protests if these laws go through. So, yeah, it's very bad. Very, very bad. I mean, that was what kicked it off, was like the Standing Rock protests. And that's been documented. There's a bunch of like, tape and video of oil executives and legislators being like, well, we don't want another Standing Rock happening. So actually, it was the API's little brother, the American Fuel and Petrochemical Manufacturers, that drafted that sample legislation and pushed it to all of the states that they could.
It's so interesting how, like, if you want the government to overreact to something and just like bring draconian measures to it, include indigenous people.
It is insane.
Like, have it be indigenous led. They go fucking nuts.
They really go fucking ballistic. It is nuts. It is really nuts.
Right?
Yeah. I feel like I've just really seen that recently. And these critical infrastructure laws are a great example, in part because there's, this sense that, I don't know, that like indigenous people are not going to back down. And with Standing Rock, I mean, there was really a sense that really kind of galvanized the climate movement. AOC has said that like Standing Rock is what really like got her behind climate action, which like led to, the Green New Deal. But it is this weird like mix of, entitlement and fear and white supremacy, and like they go fucking ballistic.
It's like the I remember noticing this first when I learned in college about the the Wounded Knee siege of 1973. You heard about this?
Mm-hmm.
By the American Indian Movement, also known as AIM. And like, it's not even that many indigenous people taking up a post at Wounded Knee. It's not even that many people. Yeah. The American government goes fucking nuts. We're talking tanks. We're talking helicopters. They went fucking crazy in the way that they reacted to that. Yes. And it's like, damn.
Yes.
Guilty conscious?
It's really wild. It is really, really wild. Yeah. And like
you saw it again at Standing Rock.
You saw it again at Standing Rock? Yeah, it was like this crazy, violent overreaction. And now all these laws. It's just wild. It is wild. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, there's still a lot more fights left to fight. And, good to celebrate the wins when they come. I think that, that was, it was actually like kind of nice to see so many climate people being like, oh my God, there's good news. Oh, actually, and I forgot one, which is that the Australian courts said that the youth in one of the youth climate suits that was filed there, like do have a case and can proceed with suing the government to try to require them to protect their right to a healthy environment. So that's interesting too. Those cases, like a lot of these cases that are being filed under within the framing of human rights are really interesting because I do feel like that is directly tied to a shift in the climate conversation from being like a, technology thing to being a human thing. So, yeah. Anyway, all right.
Well, I will say that we had good news and we had bad news. I don't think the pipelines necessarily, the pipelines themselves are always bad news, but the mobilization against them, I'm going to file that under good news and take that with me into the summer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. That is good news. Yes. All right. Awesome. Well, that's it for this time. And, we'll be back. We'll see you when we see you, hotcakes. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I mean, in the meantime, keep fucking that chicken.
Keep fucking that chicken.